Hey everybody, welcome back to another must-know endgame technique. Because this one was so widely requested by a lot of you, today we're going to go over a queen versus pawn endgame. Specifically, queen versus pawn on the 7th rank. Now a quick note here, if the pawn is not on the 7th rank, then the side with the queen is going to win 100% of the time, no matter which pawn the enemy has. Now let's get started with the basic technique and how to convert this type of position. It's white's turn to move and win the game. The challenge here, black, as you can see, is only one square away from promoting. Now I think that the idea behind this technique is pretty intuitive, at least to start. You can't allow black any free moves because he's obviously going to promote as soon as he can, so you need to force the black king to the d1 square. Once the enemy king is there, you're going to move your king closer to the action. You're going to repeat the same pattern until the king arrives on one of these three squares, either c3, d3, or over here on e3. Now, let's see it in practice. There are multiple ways of doing this, but let's show a queen to e4 variation. Now we can see that the black king isn't defending his pawn anymore, so we play queen to d3. Black defends with king to e1, and now we're going to play queen to e3. The only square available now for black that would allow him to defend his pawn is d1, and we just achieved our goal. Now that the king is on d1, white can essentially waste a move here and walk his king down the board. Black is going to try and promote by moving to the other side, but again, white has multiple ways of forcing him back to d1. He can play this powerful pin. If black moves to c3, then queen to d1 wins the spot. We have c1 by black, queen moves to c4, to b2, d3, and then moves to c1. It's the exact same scenario, but this time on the other side. As we can see, white has multiple ways of dealing with this and is going to continue this pattern until the king is on one of those three squares and is going to capture the pawn the next turn. Okay, makes sense, right? Now let's analyze some more complicated scenarios, starting with a rook pawn. Now, question for you guys. Looking at this position right here, can you tell if it's a winning position or not? Now, if you're thinking that may be a trick question and your mind says that this position is a draw, then congratulations, that's the correct answer. The problem that we often encounter here when dealing with a rook pawn is that after we check, black has this little refuge here with king to h1. And if you try and bring your king in to help, well, too bad, you just ended the game in a stalemate. White's only hope for a win here is to move away from the g file. But unfortunately for him, no matter what he tries, he can't get that king to leave that safe space. Now, a quick note here for the defender. If you ever found yourself in this position, do not blunder this mate in one by playing h1. Another quick note for the defender, yes, technically, this position is a draw, but black really has to know what he's doing because the only drawing move in this position is moving the king to g1 and just repeating moves. Now, if, let's say, he goes to g3, for example, white would have the upper hand once again by playing queen to e4. Now, did you see how this move is going to win the game for white? First of all, it protects the promoting square, while also cutting off the black king's access to g2. Now, no matter what black moves next, white is going to play queen to h1 and win this game. A quick note for the attacker too. In this position, it might be a win if your king is close enough to deliver a checkmate. Now, when I say close enough, I mean on the 5th rank. It's white's turn to move. Can you tell me the fastest way here for a checkmate? It's actually the unnatural king to g4 move. Now, white would allow black to promote because with the king on g2, his new queen can't really do anything. We have queen to e4, king to g1. Move to e1 and e2, and now this beautiful king to g3. Now, even if it's black's turn to move, his queen has no square from which it could check the white king. Queen to h2, queen takes. Queen to h3, king takes. Queen to h8, trying to attack from behind. Well, too bad. You don't have time because e1 is checkmate. Really just a beautiful little situation. Now, as we can see, even if this position is technically a draw, black has to be super careful with his technique going forward. Now, let's get to the most complicated position you can encounter here, which is when you're dealing with a bishop pawn. Bishops, man. What can you do about them, right? So why is this the most complicated position? Well, Wouldn't we apply the same technique we saw in the first example, let's say? The problem with that is, in this position, black is not forced to go behind the pawn. Instead, he can move over here to a1. And if white captures, well, then it's going to be a stalemate. Okay, so this is pretty easy. You just put the king in the corner and it's a draw no matter what. So why is this the most complicated position? Well, it's because if we change the black king's position to the other side, the long side of the board, the position is no longer a draw. It's in fact a win for white. But again, white really has to know the exact correct technique to win this. The position is a win for white because now the king is so much closer and he's going to be able to help his queen deliver a checkmate. Again, there are several ways of doing this, but the main idea is to bring your king to the third file and afterward deliver a checkmate with your queen. Now you're going to understand it better once I show it to you. You can start with whichever move you want. Let's start with d5. If king moves to c1, then we'll bring our king in closer as well. If the king moves to c3, we have queen to e5. King to d2, d4, e1, c3. And now we can see that no matter the route, we still arrive in this position. As we said, we bring our king a little bit closer. Black is going to play b2, not b1, because he doesn't want his pawn pinned by white's queen. d2, and black again is going to try this sneaky little defense with king to a1. Now, if we take, it would be a stalemate. But we're not going to make that blunder. And instead, we're going to play king to b3. King moves to b1. And now, we have a mate in 2. So let me show you another possible outcome that you might encounter. And it's a good pattern to remember. Instead of d5, you can start with f4. And after a few moves, we're going to arrive here. Okay, so king to b1. And here, we're not going to pin the pawn or continue with the checks, but he'll play king to b3. Even if that might seem like a blunder, allowing black to promote, in reality, this is the winning pattern. We take advantage of the king's position to deliver the final blow. Even if black promotes here, white has a forced checkmate in 4 moves. Can you see it now? It's queen to e4 and queen to a4. Now black can't defend with queen to c2 because we'd take it with a check. So his only move is king to a1. And then queen to a2 finishes the job. Now this position with the king on the long side is only winning because the king is closer to the pawn and he can create that checkmate threat. If the white king were on the 6th rank, this position would be a draw because no matter how hard the white queen tries, we'd still arrive at his king to a1 move. Also, if the king is close enough, even if the king is on the shorter side of the pawn, this position is a win for white, because he could deliver a checkmate even if black successfully promotes his pawn. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope now you have a better understanding of how to checkmate using your queen when the enemy has a pawn that's 1 square away from promoting. Now, I'm sure you're going to encounter some variation of this endgame in some of your games, and hopefully now you're going to be a lot better prepared to take it on. I'll see you in the next one.